The sky over Epsilon 7 burned red that evening, but it wasn't the sunset. Hansol Kim stood at his guard post, rifle in hand, watching the crimson clouds drift across the horizon. He had been stationed on this mining colony for 8 months now, and every day felt the same. Wake up, patrol the perimeter, check the equipment, sleep, repeat. The war against the Devourer swarm raged across the galaxy. But here on this forgotten rock, nothing ever happened. Hansol was 26 years old, a corporal in the United Earth Defense Force. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be on the front lines fighting the real battles. But after what happened on Colony 7, after he failed to save his sister Yuna, they sent him here, out of sight, out of the way. A soldier they didn't trust anymore. "Kim, you seeing this?" The voice crackled in his helmet radio. It was Private Jin Ho, one of the few soldiers Hansol actually talked to. Hansol looked up. Something bright streaked across the sky, trailing fire and smoke. It wasn't a meteor. The object was too controlled, too deliberate in its descent. It was a ship, and it was falling fast. "I see it," Hansol replied, already moving toward the barracks. "Alert the commander." By the time Hansol reached the command center, the entire base was awake. Commander Taemin Park stood at the holodisplay, watching the crash site coordinates flash on the screen. The ship had gone down 15 kilometers away, deep in the crimson forest that surrounded the mining colony. "Orders, sir?" Hansol asked, saluting. Commander Park didn't look at him. The commander never looked at him. "Take a squad and investigate. Do not engage with any survivors. Do not touch anything. Report back only." "Understood?" "Yes, sir." And Kim, Park finally turned, his eyes cold. "Don't do anything stupid. We're humans. We're at the bottom of the coalition food chain. We follow protocol. We don't make waves." Hansol nodded and left to gather his team. Jinho was already waiting, along with Specialist Daesung. They took one transport vehicle and headed toward the crash site. The Crimson Forest got its name from the red-leafed trees that covered most of Epsilon 7. Beautiful from a distance, deadly up close. The trees released toxic spores at night, and the wildlife was aggressive. They found the wreckage 2 hours later. The ship had carved a burning path through the forest, leaving destruction in its wake. Hansol approached carefully, scanning for threats. The vessel was unlike anything he had seen before. It was elegant, curved, made of some kind of silver metal that shimmered even while burning. "That's a Shinari ship," Daesung whispered, his voice filled with awe. "Royal design. I saw pictures in training. The Shinari were legends in the coalition. They were one of the founding species, ancient and powerful. They had technology humans could only dream about. They were also notoriously proud and kept their distance from younger species like humanity." Hansol moved closer to the wreckage. The hull had split open, exposing the interior. Emergency lights flickered weakly inside. He could hear something, a sound. Like crying. "Stay here," he told his team. "Cover me." He climbed through the breach in the hull, his weapon ready. Inside, the ship was a mess. Elegant furniture was scattered everywhere. Strange devices sparked and died. And in the center of it all, crumpled against a wall, was a figure. She was small, maybe the size of a human teenager. Her skin glowed with a soft blue light, even covered in injuries. She had long silver hair and delicate wings that sprouted from her back. One wing was torn, bent at an unnatural angle. Her eyes opened as Hansol approached. They were large and purple, filled with pain and fear. "Don't move," Hansol said gently, lowering his weapon. "I'm here to help." She said something in a language he didn't understand. Her voice was musical but weak. She tried to move away from him, pressing herself against the wall. She was terrified. Hansol recognized that look. He had seen it before in his sister's eyes during the attack on Colony 7. The fear of someone who knew they were going to die. He slowly removed his helmet so she could see his face. "I won't hurt you," he said, even though he knew she probably didn't understand. He pointed to himself. "Hansol, friend." She stared at him with wide eyes. Then she tried to speak again, but this time something happened. Images flashed in Hansol's mind. Not words, but feelings. Fear, pain, confusion, and a desperate need for her mother. "Telepathy," Hansol muttered. The Shinari were telepathic. He had read about it in the briefings. He took out his medical kit and showed it to her. "Medicine, help." He pointed to her injuries. She hesitated, then nodded slightly. Hansol moved closer and began treating her wounds as best he could with his limited supplies. As he worked, More images came to him through her telepathy. He saw a grand palace, a beautiful woman who must be her mother, and another girl who looked like her older sister. He saw her name in his mind, not as a word, but as a concept. Nira. Suddenly his radio crackled. "Kim, status report. What did you find?" Han Sol was about to respond when his scanner started beeping frantically. He looked at the reading and his blood ran cold. The ship's reactor was leaking radiation. Dangerous levels. They needed to leave immediately. But there was something else on the scanner. Multiple signatures approaching fast from the north. He knew those readings. Devorah's swarm scouts. They must have detected the crash and were coming to investigate. If they found Nira, they would tear her apart and use her body to create more of their kind. "Kim, report." Commander Park's voice was sharp in his ear. Han Sol looked at Nira. She was barely conscious, unable to walk. Protocol said he should leave her and report back. Wait for proper recovery teams. Follow orders. But Protocol had killed his sister. Following orders had meant standing there while she died, waiting for backup that came too late. "Reactor breach detected," Han Sol said into his radio. "No survivors found. Returning to base." He turned off his radio before the commander could respond. Then he gently lifted Nira into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her body delicate. She looked up at him with confused, frightened eyes. "I've got you," Han Sol whispered. "I won't let you die alone. Not like you, nah." He carried her out of the wreckage and back to where Jin-Ho and Daesung were waiting. Both men stared at him in shock. "Corporal, what are you doing?" Daesung asked. "That's a Shinari Royal. We can't just—" "The swarm is coming," Han Sol cut him off. "If we leave her, she dies." "I'm not doing that. You two can head back if you want." Jin-Ho and Daesung looked at each other. Then Jin-Ho picked up his rifle. "We're with you." Daesung sighed but nodded. "Emergency bunker Delta 7 is 15 kilometers west. We can make it if we move fast." Han Sol adjusted his grip on Nira and started moving into the Crimson Forest. Behind them, the wreckage exploded as the reactor finally failed. In the distance, the clicking sounds of Devourer scouts grew louder. The hunt had begun. The Crimson Forest lived up to its deadly reputation. Han Sol pushed through the thick undergrowth, his arms aching from carrying Nira. The alien princess had lost consciousness again, her soft blue glow flickering like a dying light. Jin-Ho led the way with a scanner, checking for threats. Daesung covered their rear, his weapon ready. "Movement 300 meters behind us," Daesung called out. "Multiple contacts. They're tracking us." Han Sol didn't need to ask what was following them. The Devourer swarm didn't give up once they caught a scent. They would chase them all the way to the bunker and beyond if necessary. "How far to Delta 7? Han Sol asked, adjusting Nira's weight in his arms. 12 kilometers, Jin-Ho replied. "But there's a problem. The direct route goes through the spore fields. At night, those fields are death traps." Han Sol checked his watch. They had maybe 2 hours before full darkness. The toxic spores that gave the Crimson Forest its name only released at night, and without proper sealed suits they would be dead in minutes. "We take the long route," Han Sol decided, "around the ravine." "That adds 5 kilometers, Daesung protested. "We'll be running all night." "Better than breathing poison," Han Sol shot back. They pushed forward, moving as fast as they could through the difficult terrain. Nira stirred in Han Sol's arms, her eyes opening briefly. She looked up at him and more images flooded his mind. He saw himself through her eyes. A strange creature with rough skin and small eyes carrying her through an alien forest. She was still afraid, but there was something else now. Confusion. Why was he helping her? Han Sol sent a thought back, hoping she could understand. Safe. Making you safe. Whether she understood or not, she closed her eyes again, her body relaxing slightly in his grip. An hour passed. 2 hours. Han Sol's arms burned with fatigue and his legs felt like lead. Behind them, the clicking sounds of the swarm grew closer. They were good hunters, faster than humans in this terrain. "Contact," Jin-Ho suddenly shouted, raising his weapon. Something massive burst from the trees ahead. It wasn't a swarm scout. It was one of the forest predators, a 6-legged beast with razor-sharp claws and multiple eyes. It had been hunting them silently, waiting for the right moment to strike. The creature lunged at Jin-Ho. He fired, but the creature was too fast. It knocked him down, jaws snapping toward his throat. Daesung fired, hitting the creature in its side, but it barely flinched. Han Sol had no choice. He gently set Nira down against a tree and drew his combat knife. The creature was on top of Jin-Ho, about to kill him. Han-Sol jumped onto its back, driving his knife into its thick hide. The creature roared and spun, trying to throw him off. "Shoot it!" Han-Sol yelled. Jin-Ho scrambled away and Daesung opened fire. Bullets tore into the creature, but it wouldn't die. It slammed Han-Sol against a tree and he felt something crack in his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body, but he held on, stabbing again and again. Finally, the creature collapsed, dead. Han-Sol fell to the ground beside it, gasping for breath. His shoulder was bleeding badly, the pain almost unbearable. "Corporal." Jin-Ho rushed over to him. "You're hit bad." Han-Sol pushed himself up, wincing. "I'm fine." "We keep moving." "You're not fine," Daesung said, pulling out medical supplies. "Let me patch that." While Daesung worked on his shoulder, Han-Sol looked over at Nira. She was awake, staring at him with those large purple eyes. She had seen everything. Seen him put himself in danger to save Jin-Ho. Seen him take a wound that could have killed him. She reached out a trembling hand toward him. Her fingers touched his arm, and suddenly Han-Sol felt warmth spreading from the contact. The pain in his shoulder lessened just a little. She was trying to help him even though she was barely able to move herself. "Save your strength," Han-Sol said gently, pulling away. "You need it more than I do." But something had changed. When he picked her up again, she didn't resist. She pressed her face against his chest and he felt a wave of emotion through their telepathic connection. Gratitude, trust, and something that felt like wonder. They continued through the forest. The clicking sounds behind them grew louder. The swarm was getting closer. Han-Sol's shoulder throbbed with each step, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. As they moved, Nira's telepathy seemed to grow stronger, or maybe Han-Sol was just getting better at receiving it. He saw more of her memories. Her mother, Queen Valara, was stern but loving. Her sister Haewon was protective and brave. Nira was the youngest, the most sheltered. She had never been in danger before, never been away from the safety of the palace. She had been traveling to a diplomatic meeting when the swarm attacked her escort. Her ship fled, but the engines were damaged. They crashed on the nearest planet. Everyone else aboard had died in the impact. She had been alone waiting to die when Han-Sol found her. Through their connection, Han-Sol shared his own memories. He showed her Yuna, his little sister. Showed her the attack on Colony 7, the bombs falling, the screams. He showed her how he had been pinned under debris, how he could only watch as Yuna called for him, reaching out before the building collapsed on her. He showed Nira why he couldn't leave her behind, why he would carry her through hell itself if he had to, because every person he saved was a chance to make up for the one he couldn't. Nira's small hand gripped his uniform tightly. He felt her pain, her understanding. She sent him an image, a feeling. It wasn't words, but he understood it clearly. "Thank you. Movement ahead," Jin-Ho called out. "Multiple contacts blocking our path." Han-Sol's heart sank. More swarm scouts had circled around, cutting off their escape route. They were surrounded. The bunker was still 3 kilometers away, but they would never make it through the swarm forces. "Ideas?" Daesung asked, checking his ammunition. "Because I'm down to 2 magazines." Han-Sol scanned the area. To their left was a steep cliff face, unclimbable. To their right was dense forest that led deeper into swarm territory. Ahead were the scouts. Behind them more were coming. Then he saw it. A narrow ravine cutting through the cliff face. It was barely wide enough for a person to squeeze through, and it looked unstable. But it might lead them around the swarm's position. "There," Han-Sol pointed. "Through that gap." "That's crazy," Jin-Ho said. "The whole thing could collapse." "So could our situation," Han-Sol replied. "Move!" They ran for the ravine as the swarm scouts spotted them and gave chase. The clicking sounds became a chorus of rage. Han-Sol could hear them behind him, getting closer, almost close enough to grab. Jin-Ho reached the ravine first and squeezed through. Daesung followed, then turned to provide cover fire. Han-Sol ran. Nira clutched tight against his chest, his injured shoulder screaming in protest. He reached the opening just as a swarm scout lunged at him. Daesung's bullets caught it midair, dropping it. Han-Sol squeezed into the ravine, the rough stones scraping his back. The space was so narrow he had to turn sideways, protecting Nira with his body. Behind them, the scouts tried to follow, but they were too large. They clawed at the opening, shrieking in frustration. The 3 soldiers and the princess moved through the ravine, barely breathing in the tight space. Above them, rocks shifted and groaned. Dust rained down. The whole thing was ready to collapse faster, Hansol urged. They emerged on the other side just as the ravine collapsed behind them, sealing off their pursuers. For a moment they were safe. But ahead in the darkness, more clicking sounds echoed. The swarm was waiting. Dawn broke over the crimson forest, painting everything in shades of red and gold. Hansol had been moving for 12 hours straight, and his body was close to giving out. His shoulder wound had stopped bleeding, but every movement sent fresh waves of pain through his arm. Nira remained unconscious in his arms, her blue glow growing dimmer with each passing hour. Bunker Delta 7, 1 kilometer ahead, Jinho reported, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. They had outrun the swarm scouts through the night by taking impossible risks and burning through all their stamina. Dae-sung had twisted his ankle in a fall, and Jinho had cuts all over his face from pushing through thorny bushes. But they were alive, and they were close. Hansol's radio suddenly crackled to life. "Corporal Kim, this is Commander Park. Respond immediately." Hansol had turned his radio back on an hour ago, knowing they would need support once they reached the bunker. He pressed the button. "This is Kim. We're approaching Bunker Delta 7. Need immediate medical evacuation." "Negative." Park's voice was cold. "You disobeyed direct orders. Return to base immediately for disciplinary action." "Sir, I have wounded that need urgent care. You reported no survivors, Corporal, so unless you're wounded, I don't see the problem." Hansol stopped walking. Jinho and Dae-sung looked at him, worry on their faces. They all knew what this meant. If Hansol admitted he had the Shinari princess, it would become a political situation. Commander Park would use it to gain favor with the coalition, to make himself look important. "Sir, I have a civilian refugee who requires immediate medical attention." There was a long silence. When Park spoke again, his voice was sharp. "What kind of refugee, Corporal?" Before Hansol could respond, multiple transport ships roared overhead. They were coalition vessels, but they bore Earth's markings. They began landing around the bunker. "Stay where you are," Park commanded. "That's a direct order." Hansol kept moving toward the bunker. When they arrived, a full platoon of Earth soldiers was already there, weapons ready. Commander Park stood at the front, his face twisted in false concern. "Corporal Kim," Park said loudly, for the benefit of the other soldiers, "thank God you're safe. Now hand over the Shinari Royal so we can ensure her proper care." So he already knew. Someone must have reported the Shinari ship, and Park had put the pieces together. "She needs medical attention immediately," Hansol said. "Not a political negotiation." "I agree completely," Park smiled. "Which is why I've already contacted the Shinari embassy. They're sending a recovery team. But until they arrive, the princess will be in our protective custody." Hansol looked down at Nira. Even unconscious, he could feel her fear through their connection. She didn't trust what was happening. Neither did he. "With respect, sir, I'll wait with her until the Shinari arrive." Park's smile vanished. "That wasn't a request, Corporal. Hand her over, now." "No." The word hung in the air like a bomb. Soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Jinho and Dae-sung moved closer to Hansol, their weapons ready. "You're refusing a direct order?" Park's face turned red. "I made a promise to protect her. I keep my promises." Park drew his sidearm. "Last chance, Kim." Hansol felt Nira stir in his arms. Her eyes opened, looking up at him. Through their connection, he felt her question. "Danger?" He sent back reassurance. "Safe. I promise." But promises, Hansol was learning, were hard to keep. The situation might have turned into violence, but the swarm made their move first. Alarms blared across every soldier's helmet. Scanners showed what they had all feared. The swarm had found them, and they were attacking in force. "Defensive positions!" Park shouted, his political games forgotten in the face of real danger. The swarm came like a wave of nightmares. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, pouring out of the forest. They had been gathering during the night, waiting for the right moment. Now they saw their chance to claim both human and Shinari prey. The battle was chaos. Earth soldiers opened fire, their bullets tearing through swarm bodies. But for every one that fell, two more took its place. They swarmed over the defensive positions, their sharp limbs tearing through armor and flesh. Hansol ran for the bunker entrance, still carrying Nira. Jinho and Dae-sung covered him, firing controlled bursts. Commander Park was shouting orders, but his voice was lost in the sounds of battle. A swarm scout leaped at Park from the side. The commander turned, tried to shoot, but he was too slow. The creature's claws ripped through his chest. Park fell, his eyes wide with shock and pain. He reached out toward his soldiers, but no one could help him. The swarm took him! Inside the bunker! Jin-Ho yelled. They fought their way through the entrance. Other soldiers tried to follow, but the swarm was too fast. Han-Sol watched in horror as men and women he had served with were pulled down, screaming. Close the door, someone shouted. There are still people out there. Han-Sol protested. Close it now or we all die. Jin-Ho hit the control panel. The massive steel door began sliding shut. Outside, soldiers pounded on it, begging to be let in. But the door kept closing, it had to. Han-Sol turned away, unable to watch. The door sealed with a heavy thud. Outside, the screaming continued for a few more minutes. Then silence. Inside the bunker, there were only 12 people left. Han-Sol, Jin-Ho, Dae-Sung, and 9 other soldiers. That was all that remained of the platoon. Han-Sol gently laid Nira on a bench. She was barely conscious, her breathing shallow. He used the bunker's medical supplies to treat her properly, finally able to give her the care she needed. We're trapped, one soldier said, his voice shaking. They're all around us. Dae-Sung checked the bunker's systems. We have power, air filtration, and supplies for maybe a week. But we have no communications. The swarm is jamming everything. The Shinari will come looking for their princess, another soldier offered hopefully. If they know where to look, Dae-Sung replied grimly, and if they get here before the swarm breaks through. As if responding to his words, something heavy slammed against the bunker door. Then again, and again. The swarm was trying to break in. Han-Sol sat beside Nira, holding her hand. Through their connection, he could feel her slipping away. The injuries, the stress, the telepathic effort of communicating with him. It was all too much for her young body. Don't you die on me, Han-Sol whispered. I didn't carry you this far just to lose you now. But Nira's glow was fading. Her breath came in short gasps. Time was running out. Jin-Ho came over and sat beside Han-Sol. You did good, brother. No matter what happens, you did the right thing. Doesn't feel like it. It never does. Jin-Ho smiled sadly. But that's how you know it was worth doing. The pounding on the door grew louder. The swarm wasn't giving up. They would break through eventually. It was only a matter of time. Han-Sol looked around the bunker at the exhausted, terrified soldiers. They had maybe a few hours before the door gave way. After that, it would be a slaughter. Nira's hand suddenly squeezed his. Her eyes opened, glowing brighter than before. She looked directly at him, and he felt her intention through their connection. She was going to use her telepathy, use it at full power to send a distress signal to her people. But in her condition, it would kill her. No, Han-Sol said firmly. There has to be another way. She sent him a feeling, a concept. Det, you saved me. Now I save you. That's not how this works. But she was already gathering her strength. Her body began to glow brighter, the blue light filling the bunker. The other soldiers stared in awe. What's she doing? Someone asked. Stop her. Han-Sol grabbed Nira's shoulders. Please, don't do this. But Nira smiled at him, a sad, gentle smile. She reached up and touched his face. One last image passed between them. A memory of her mother, Queen Valara. A message Nira wanted Han-Sol to deliver. Tell her, I was brave. Like the humans, then the light exploded outward. Han-Sol woke to the sound of machines beeping softly around him. His body felt strange, weightless, as if he was floating. He tried to open his eyes, but even that simple action took enormous effort. When his vision finally cleared, he saw a ceiling made of crystalline material that glowed with soft purple light. This wasn't the bunker. This wasn't any human facility. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his entire body. Though it was duller than he expected, he looked down and saw his shoulder wound was completely bandaged in some kind of living material that pulsed with gentle energy. You are awake. The voice was melodic, speaking perfect English through a translator device. Please do not move too quickly. Your injuries were extensive. Han-Sol turned his head and saw a Shinari standing beside his bed. She was tall and elegant, with silver hair and the same luminescent skin as Nira. But where Nira had seemed young and fragile, this Shinari radiated authority and power. Where am I? Han-Sol asked, his throat dry. You are aboard the royal flagship Eternal Dawn, the Shinari replied. You have been unconscious for 4 days, 4 days. The bunker. The swarm. Nira's sacrifice. Nira. Han-Sol tried to sit up again, panic flooding through him. Is she alive? Did she survive? The Shinari's expression softened slightly. Princess Nira lives. She is recovering in the Royal Medical Wing. Her telepathic burst successfully alerted the fleet to her location. We arrived within 3 hours. Relief washed over Hansol so powerfully that tears came to his eyes. She was alive. He hadn't failed. Not this time. The others? He asked. My squad? 7 soldiers survived, including you. They are being treated in the human medical bay. 2 did not make it. The Shinari paused. We arrived as the swarm was breaking through the bunker door. You were found unconscious, covering Princess Nira with your own body. Hansol didn't remember that. He remembered the bright light, Nira collapsing, and then nothing. Queen Valara wishes to speak with you, the Shinari said. When you are ready. I'm ready now. The Shinari looked doubtful, but she helped him into a wheelchair. As they moved through the ship's corridors, Hansol marveled at the beauty around him. Everything was graceful and efficient, technology beyond anything humans had achieved. Crew members stopped to stare at him as he passed, whispered conversations following in his wake. They entered a grand chamber. At the far end, seated on a throne of living crystal, was Queen Valara. She was breathtaking and terrifying in equal measure. Her presence filled the room like gravity itself. Her eyes, the same purple as Nira's, fixed on Hansol with an intensity that made him want to look away. But he didn't. He met her gaze steadily. Leave us, Valara commanded, her voice resonating with power. The attendants, including the one pushing Hansol's wheelchair, quickly left. The doors closed with a soft sound, leaving Hansol alone with the most powerful being in the coalition. For a long moment, Valara simply studied him. Hansol felt like an insect under a microscope. Then she spoke. Why? The question was simple, but Hansol understood what she was really asking. Why did you risk everything for my daughter? Why did you disobey orders? Why did you fight when you could have walked away? Because she needed help, Hansol answered. Because leaving someone to die when you can save them makes you less than human. And because I made a promise to myself after my sister died. Never again. Never watch someone die when I can do something about it. Valara rose from her throne and descended the steps toward him. Up close, she was even more imposing. She stopped right in front of his wheelchair, looking down at him. Do you know what you have done? She asked. You have created a political disaster. The human government wants to court-martial you for insubordination. Other coalition species are demanding your punishment for violating diplomatic protocol. Some are calling for your execution. I know, Hansol said quietly. I knew it when I made the choice. But I'd do it again. Valara's expression didn't change. My advisors tell me that any Shinari soldier would have waited for proper authorization. That protocol exists for good reasons. That your actions, while brave, were ultimately foolish. Maybe they're right. They are wrong. Valara's voice was fierce. If my soldiers had followed protocol, my daughter would be dead. If they had waited for authorization, she would be dead. You did what none of them could do. You saw a person in need and you acted. Without hesitation, without calculation, without concern for yourself. She knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with Hansol. I am a queen. I have ruled for 300 of your years. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have met heroes and villains from 1,000 worlds. But I have never met anyone quite like you, Hansol Kim. I'm just a soldier, Your Majesty. No, Valara said firmly. You are the being who saved my daughter's life. In Shinari culture, that creates a life debt, the highest honor we can bestow. From this moment forward, you are under the personal protection of the Shinari throne. Anyone who harms you harms me. Hansol didn't know what to say. The most powerful queen in the galaxy was pledging to protect a lowly human corporal. You deserve more than I can ever give you, Valara interrupted. But there is a problem. Your own people want to punish you. And I cannot interfere in human justice without creating a political crisis that could destabilize the coalition. I understand, Hansol said. I knew the risks. Valara studied him for another long moment. Then she did something that shocked him. A single tear rolled down her face, glowing softly in the dim light. You humans, she said softly. You're so young, so primitive in so many ways. We looked down on you, dismissed you as barely civilized. But you have something we lost long ago in all our advancement and protocol. She touched the tear on her cheek. The ability to care more about what is right than what is proper. She stood and walked to a window showing the stars beyond. Nira wants to see you. I will arrange it before you are transferred to human custody for your trial. Thank you, Your Majesty. Valara turned back to him. Do not thank me yet. I intend to attend your trial personally, and I promise you this, Hansol Kim. If they condemn you for saving my daughter, they will condemn me alongside you. The next day, Hansol was allowed to visit Nira. She was in a beautiful medical chamber filled with soft light and gentle music. When she saw him, her face lit up with joy. She tried to get out of bed, but her attendants gently stopped her. Hansol wheeled himself closer. Nira reached out and took his hand, and immediately their telepathic connection reformed. But this time it was clearer, stronger. He could feel her emotions like they were his own. Joy, relief, gratitude, and something else. Affection. You came back, she said in broken English. Clearly having studied during his unconsciousness, I promised. Hansol replied. I keep my promises. I know, Nira smiled. That is why you are special. They talked for an hour, communication flowing between words and thoughts. Nira told him about her recovery, about how scared she had been during the telepathic burst, thinking it would be the last thing she ever did. She told him about her mother's reaction when she learned everything Hansol had done. In return, Hansol talked about his sister, about his regrets, about why he became a soldier. It felt good to share these things with someone who truly understood. When it was time for Hansol to leave, Nira held his hand tightly. They want to punish you. For saving me. I know. That is wrong, Nira said fiercely. I will not let them. You're a princess. You can't interfere with human justice. Nira's eyes flashed with determination that reminded him of her mother. Watch me. 2 days later, Hansol was transferred to a military transport. As he left the Shinari flagship, the entire crew lined the corridors in silence. When he passed, each one placed their hand over their heart in a Shinari gesture of deepest respect. Even Queen Valara came to see him off. She said nothing, but her eyes promised that this wasn't over. The trial was about to begin. The military tribunal was held in Geneva, in the grand hall where humanity made its most important decisions. Hansol sat alone at the defendant's table, dressed in a clean uniform stripped of all rank insignia. His shoulder had healed thanks to Shinari medicine, but his heart felt heavy as he looked at the 5 judges who would decide his fate. General Park Soo-jin, a stern woman with silver hair, led the tribunal. She looked at Hansol with cold disapproval. Corporal Hansol Kim, you are charged with disobeying direct orders, abandoning your post, and interfering in coalition diplomatic affairs. How do you plead? Guilty, ma'am. There was no point denying it. He had broken the rules. He just didn't regret it. The prosecutor, a sharp-faced major named Lee Sang-woo, stood up. Members of the tribunal, this case is simple. Corporal Kim deliberately disobeyed Commander Park's orders. He lied to his superior officer. He took it upon himself to interfere with a situation far above his authority. His actions, while superficially heroic, represent a dangerous precedent. Soldiers cannot be allowed to ignore orders simply because they disagree with them. Major Lee continued for 20 minutes, building his case. He argued that discipline was the foundation of any military, that Hansol's actions, if left unpunished, would encourage other soldiers to disobey orders, that the chaos this would create could cost lives. Hansol listened quietly. Everything the major said was technically correct. In a perfect world where orders were always right and timing was never critical, following protocol would be the correct choice. But the world wasn't perfect. When it was the defense's turn, Lieutenant Cho Mi-young, Hansol's assigned defender, stood up. She was young and looked nervous. Members of the tribunal, I don't dispute the facts. Corporal Kim did disobey orders. But context matters. Princess Nira would have died if he had followed protocol. The radiation leak, the swarm scouts, there was no time to wait for proper channels. Sometimes rules need to be broken to save lives. It wasn't a strong argument, and everyone in the room knew it. The tribunal couldn't set a precedent that soldiers could disobey orders whenever they felt like it. General Park was about to speak when the hall doors suddenly burst open. Guards rushed in, shouting in confusion. And through the doors came Queen Valara herself, flanked by 2 royal guards. The entire room fell silent. A Shinari queen on Earth uninvited. It was unprecedented. This tribunal is closed to outside observers, General Park said, recovering her composure. Your Majesty, while we respect your concern, you cannot— I am not here as an observer, Valara said, her voice filling the hall with undeniable authority. I am here as a witness. I have testimony crucial to these proceedings." General Park looked like she wanted to argue, but denying a coalition queen would create its own diplomatic disaster. "Very well. Please approach the witness stand." Valara walked to the front of the hall, her presence commanding everyone's attention. She didn't sit. Instead, she turned to face not just the tribunal, but the cameras broadcasting this trial across Earth and the Coalition. "I am Queen Valara of the Shinari Empire," she began. "For 3 centuries I have led my people. I have made peace and war. I have seen countless acts of courage and cowardice, but I have never witnessed anything like what Corporal Hansol Kim did for my daughter." She gestured toward Hansol. "This human soldier found my child dying in a crashed ship. He could have followed his orders and left her. His commander wanted him to. Protocol demanded it, but he looked at a scared, injured girl and made a choice. He chose mercy over orders, compassion over protocol, life over politics." The Queen's voice grew stronger. "My advisors tell me humans are primitive, that you lack our wisdom and discipline. After seeing how you want to punish this soldier, I am starting to believe they are right. But not in the way they think." General Park's face reddened, but she remained silent. "You are primitive," Valara continued, "because you value rules more than lives. You are undisciplined, because you cannot recognize true courage when it stands before you. And you lack wisdom because you want to destroy the one quality that makes humans special in this galaxy: your capacity for immediate, selfless action." She turned to face Hansol directly. "This soldier carried my daughter through a deadly forest for hours. He took wounds protecting her. He fought impossible odds, and when the end came, when the swarm was breaking through, he covered her body with his own, ready to die so she might live one moment longer." Valara's voice cracked with emotion. "I am a mother who nearly lost her child. For 4 hours I believed Nira was dead. The pain of that belief nearly destroyed me. But then we received her telepathic signal and found her alive. And standing over her, wounded and unconscious but still protecting her, was this human." The Queen wiped tears from her eyes, glowing drops that fell to the floor like tiny stars. "You want to punish him for saving my daughter? Then you must punish me as well. Because I declare before this tribunal and before the entire galaxy that Hansol Kim is under the personal protection of the Shinari throne. Any punishment you give him, I will share. Imprison him and you imprison a queen. Execute him and you execute me." The hall erupted in chaos. Judges spoke over each other. The prosecutor looked shocked. News reporters shouted questions. This was madness. Political suicide. A queen couldn't be imprisoned. General Park hammered her gavel. "Order, Your Majesty, you cannot—" The doors burst open again. This time it was Nira, supported by 2 attendants. She shouldn't have been there. She was still recovering. But she walked steadily to the witness stand, her determination clear on her face. "I wish to testify," she said in careful English. "Princess Nira," General Park said more gently, "you've been through a terrible ordeal. You should be resting." "I rest when justice is done," Nira replied. She turned to look at Hansol and their eyes met. Through their telepathic bond, Hansol felt her fierce protectiveness, her anger at his treatment, and her absolute determination. Nira faced the tribunal. "I am Princess Nira of the Shinari Empire. Before I met Corporal Kim, I believed humans were dangerous, violent, unworthy of respect. These beliefs were taught to me by my people. We looked down on humans." She paused, gathering her strength. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. When my ship crashed, I was alone and dying. I called for help, but no one came. The protocols your major spoke of, they meant my people could not reach me in time. I would have died following protocol." Nira's voice grew stronger, but Hansol Kim did not care about protocol. He saw someone in need and acted. He carried me when I could not walk. He fought for me when I could not fight. He protected me when all I felt was fear. She reached up and touched her heart. He told me about his sister, Yuna. He could not save her, so he saved me. He took his pain and turned it into protection. Is this not the highest form of courage? Is this not what all soldiers should aspire to? Tears ran down Nira's face as she spoke. "I am young by my people's standards. I have much to learn. But I learned something important from a human soldier. True honor is not following rules. True honor is doing what is right even when it costs you everything." She turned to the tribunal. "If you punish him, you tell the galaxy that humanity values obedience over compassion. That you care more about rules than lives. Is that the message you wish to send?" General Park sat back in her chair, her expression troubled. The other judges looked equally conflicted. Around the hall, human soldiers and civilians watched in silence. Nira wasn't finished. Hansol told me he keeps his promises. He promised to protect me, and he did. He promised not to leave me alone, and he did not. Now I make a promise. If you punish this man for saving my life, the Shinari Empire will never forget. Every alliance, every treaty, every cooperation between our peoples will be tainted by the knowledge that humanity punishes heroes. The princess swayed slightly, exhausted. Her attendants moved to support her, but she waved them away. She walked over to Hansol and took his hand. "Mother, I have returned," she said, looking at Queen Valara, "and I returned because this human soldier protected me. I ask you now, before all these people, to help me protect him." Valara moved to her daughter's side, placing a hand on her shoulder. Mother and daughter stood together, united in their defense of Hansol. The tribunal went into recess. For 3 hours, the judges deliberated while the world watched and waited. News channels showed protests forming outside the building. Thousands of humans gathering, demanding Hansol's release. The pressure was immense. When the judges returned, General Park looked older, wearier. She cleared her throat and spoke. "This tribunal has reached a decision. Corporal Hansol Kim, please stand." Hansol stood, his heart pounding. Whatever came next, he had no regrets. "We find you guilty of the charges as stated," General Park said. Hansol's heart sank. But she continued. "However, we also recognize that exceptional circumstances require exceptional judgment. Your actions while breaking protocol saved a life and demonstrated the highest ideals of service and sacrifice." The general paused. "Therefore, while we cannot ignore your disobedience, we also cannot in good conscience punish you for it. This tribunal sentences you to time served. You are officially reprimanded and returned to active duty. Furthermore, we recommend you for the Medal of